The 17th century unfolded in ornate complexity, a time of empires expanding and worldviews shifting. Europe's great powers carved the globe with sails and steel, while the scientific revolution began to unravel the mysteries of nature through reason, not reverence. In the East, the Mughal Empire reached its artistic zenith, and Japan entered a self-imposed seclusion under Tokugawa rule, cultivating internal peace and refinement. Across the seas, the age of exploration became an age of possession, with colonizers mapping lands and naming creatures as if claiming the breath of the wild itself. Humanity's gaze grew more analytical, but less connected. Nature, once sacred, now became a resource, a machine to dissect or a curiosity to cage. Philosophers like Descartes separated the soul from the body, and by extension, the human from the animal, justifying a dominion that knew no restraint. In this fervor, countless species on remote islands vanished before science could even name them. The story of the dodo, a flightless bird native to Mauritius, became emblematic of this blind advance. Discovered by Dutch sailors, it was hunted to extinction by the end of the century, not out of malice, but neglect, as if the world had no room left for innocence. While cathedrals rang with the music of Bach and canvases bloomed with Baroque drama, the wild grew silent, one island at a time.
Mauritian giant skink was an enormous skink, once native to Mauritius, with a stout body, small head, and a tail that made up much of its impressive 80 centimeters length. It evolved in isolation after its ancestors made a remarkable ocean journey from Australasia over 3 million years ago. As a ground-dwelling omnivore, it likely thrived in rocky habitats, feeding on a mix of fruits, seeds, invertebrates, and small animals. Sadly, it disappeared shortly after humans arrived in the 1,600 years, likely due to the introduction of invasive predators such as rats. Fortunately, its smaller relative still survives on nearby Round Island, where conservation efforts have helped restore its population. Hofstadter's blind snake was an extinct, endemic species from Mauritius, known only from 7 fossilized vertebrae discovered in the early 1900 years. Estimated to exceed 20 centimeters in length, it was notably larger than the blind snake species still found on the island today and differed in several vertebral features. The species likely vanished in the 17th century, soon after the arrival of invasive predators. Hodges waterhen was a flightless rail once widespread across New Zealand, inhabiting riverbanks, grasslands, and open forests. Weighing around 280 grams, it had greatly reduced wings and was unable to fly, making it vulnerable to predators. Subfossil remains found across both main islands show it was once abundant, but it likely disappeared due to hunting and the introduction of the Pacific rat. The species survived until at least the 17th century, as indicated by its presence in Maori midden sites. The Rodriguez blue pigeon is an extinct species of blue pigeon which was endemic to Rodriguez. It is known only from the holotype Tarsometatarsus collected in 2005, associated with remains of a Rodriguez night heron and a Rodriguez rail. A femur described in 1879 but now lost may also have belonged to the species. It was not specifically mentioned by contemporary writers, and it is therefore unknown when it became extinct. The white-throated rail once had a now extinct subspecies on Mauritius, which disappeared in the 17th century shortly after the arrival of humans and invasive predators. This flightless form likely evolved independently, much like its Aldebaran relative, through isolation and the absence of mammalian threats. The extinction of the Mauritian subspecies marked the loss of yet another unique island bird before it was ever formally described. The Bermuda hawk inhabited the island of Bermuda where it is recorded in the fossil record. It is thought to account for a report of sightings of raptors made on the island in 1603 by Diego Ramirez, which mentions their possible island tameness: very handsome sparrowhawks, so stupid that we even clubbed them. The species apparently was not present in 1623, when Captain John Smith noted that there were only migrant raptors on Bermuda. Its date of extinction is not known but is presumed to have followed the human settlement on the island. The Bermuda saw-whet owl is an extinct species of owl that was endemic to Bermuda. It was described from fossil records and explorer accounts of the bird in the 17th century. The cause of its extinction is unknown, but it may have been related to the decline of Bermuda cedar and Bermuda palmetto trees, or the arrival of non-native predators and competitors after human colonization. First described in 2012, it was declared extinct only in 2014. The Bermuda towhee is an extinct bird of the towhee genus Papilio that was endemic to Bermuda. An old travel report by William Strachey, who was shipwrecked on Bermuda from 1609 to 1610, might refer to that species. He wrote in 1625, "Sparrows fat and plump like a bunting, bigger than ours." The exact cause for its extinction is unknown, but it most definitely became extinct soon after human arrival to Bermuda in the early 1600 years. Its decline is thought to have been accelerated by predation from invasive species. The Bermuda night heron was a land crab specialist, uniquely adapted with a heavy bill and strong legs, and once thrived across the island's caves and wetlands. In the 70s, its living relative was introduced to Bermuda to control crab populations, but its less selective diet led to unintended ecological damage, including threats to native species like the Bermuda rock lizard. This replacement highlights the complex consequences of substituting extinct specialists with surviving generalists. The Bermuda flicker was an endemic woodpecker known only from fossil remains, though a 1605 account by Captain John Smith suggests it may have survived into early human settlement. Most of its remains date to the late Pleistocene, but one juvenile bone from a younger layer hints at a more recent presence. Its extinction was likely accelerated by introduced predators such as wild cats, which devastated many of Bermuda's native birds. Like so many island species, it vanished quietly, leaving behind only fragments and a passing mention in a centuries-old travelogue. The Eurasian aurochs was a towering wild bovine, once roaming vast stretches of Eurasia and North Africa. With its muscular build, deep chest and long, curved horns, it stood as a powerful symbol of the untamed wilderness. Bulls could reach nearly 2 meters at the shoulder, cloaked in a dark, almost black coat, while cows were slightly smaller and reddish in hue. Aurochs played a vital ecological role as grazers, shaping landscapes and coexisting with early humans for millennia. They first evolved in India over 2 million years ago before spreading westward, adapting to diverse environments across Eurasia. Around 10,000 years ago, humans began domesticating them, giving rise to modern cattle, yet the wild aurochs persisted alongside its domesticated descendants for centuries. Gradually, however, their numbers declined due to relentless hunting, competition with livestock and the loss of habitat to expanding agriculture. By the 17th century, only a small population remained in the forests of Poland, carefully protected by royal decree. The last known aurochs died in 1627 in the Jaktaro forest, marking the quiet end of a species that once thundered across continents. The St. Helena rail was a slender, flightless bird that once inhabited the steep valleys of its remote Atlantic island home. Adapted to a predator-free environment, it evolved strong claws for climbing and likely fed on young birds, snails, and scraps from seabird colonies. Its extinction came swiftly after human arrival in the early 17th century, following the introduction of invasive predators like cats and rats. Like many island species, it vanished before it was ever observed alive, known only through subfossil remains and the traces of a lost ecosystem. The St. Helena cuckoo is an extinct bird. It was confirmed to have previously existed by a single humerus. Compared to other cuckoos, it was relatively small and it probably lived in forests on the island of St. Helena. Its extinction was a result of deforestation on the island in the 17th century. The St. Helena petrel, also known as the St. Helena gadfly petrel, is an extinct species of seabird in the family Procellariidae. It was endemic to the island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean. It most likely became extinct after overpredation by people, soon after the island's discovery in 1502. DNA results place it within the group of Atlantic Pterodroma species. The St. Helena hoopoe was a flightless relative of the common hoopoe, distinguished by its sturdier legs and reduced wings, likely adapted to a dry, shrubby landscape. Endemic to the island, it may have preyed on invertebrates like the now extinct St. Helena earwig, playing a unique role in the island's delicate ecosystem. Following human arrival in the early 17th century, it quickly succumbed to habitat destruction, hunting, and invasive predators such as rats and cats. Like many of St. Helena's lost birds, it vanished silently, leaving behind only bones and unanswered questions. The St. Helena crake was a small, flightless rail that once inhabited the remote island's valleys and wetlands. Likely descended from the widespread Baelen's crake, it evolved in isolation, losing its ability to fly in the absence of predators. Its delicate bones, uncovered in the same region as the larger St. Helena rail, reveal a bird perfectly adapted to its predator-free environment. But like so many island species, it quickly disappeared after the arrival of humans and introduced mammals in the early 17th century. Markham's frog is one of 3 extinct New Zealand frog species, the others being the Aurora frog and Waitomo frog. Subfossil bones used to describe the species were discovered at Honeycomb Hill Cave, South Island, in New Zealand, but it once occurred on both South and North Islands. It is estimated that it grew between 5 and 6 centimeters from snout to vent, and it appears to have been a very robust animal. The Ascension crake was a flightless rail endemic to Ascension Island, described in detail by 17th century traveler Peter Mundy, who noted its swift running and imperfect wings. Adapted to the island's near-desert environment, it primarily fed on the eggs of sooty terns. Despite its agility on land, it was unable to fly or swim, making it vulnerable to introduced predators. The arrival of rats and later feral cats likely sealed its fate, leading to its extinction. Larger Malagasy hippopotamus was a large extinct hippo species from Madagascar, notable for being bigger than other Malagasy hippos but smaller than the common hippopotamus. Identified from limited fossils including a lower jaw and limb bones, it was first described in 1990 based on remains found near Manenjeri. Radiocarbon dating suggests it lived both before human arrival on Madagascar and possibly as recently as the 20th century, though some late evidence remains uncertain. Its exact relationship to other hippos, especially the common hippopotamus, is unclear, and it may represent repeated African migrants rather than a distinct species. Fossils have been found along both coasts, overlapping with ranges of other Malagasy hippos, indicating a complex history of hippo presence on the island. An unnamed species of Electroenas once inhabited the island of Réunion, adding to the island's unique avian diversity. This blue pigeon, like its relatives, was likely adapted to the island's forested habitats, feeding on fruits and seeds. Unfortunately, it vanished around 1671, shortly after human settlement brought habitat changes and introduced predators. Its extinction marks another loss in the rich but fragile ecosystem of Réunion. The Réunion shelled goose was a close relative of the Egyptian goose and similar in size. Known mainly from a single detailed 1674 description in subfossil remains, it was noted for its red bill and feet and was considered good to eat. Overhunting by settlers quickly drove waterfowl populations, including this species, to decline rapidly. By the late 17th century, it had vanished, a victim of unsustainable hunting and habitat pressures. The Réunion kestrel was a medium-sized bird of prey endemic to Réunion, distinguished by its brownish plumage, rounded wings for forest hunting and a notable size difference between males and females. Its diet primarily consisted of birds, insects, and even the Reunion Island day gecko, with records indicating it occasionally preyed on domestic chickens. Although its exact extinction causes remain unclear, it disappeared around 1671 despite limited introduced predators and minimal hunting pressure compared to other birds. This mysterious loss highlights the fragile balance of island ecosystems and the challenges in fully understanding early extinctions. The Réunion fody was a small, vibrant bird endemic to Réunion, notable for the bright red plumage of breeding males and more subdued colors in females and juveniles. Once abundant and even considered a pest for damaging crops, it was last recorded shortly after 1672. Despite its former numbers, the introduction of invasive rats likely led to its rapid decline and eventual extinction. Its disappearance reflects the vulnerability of island species to new predators and environmental changes following human arrival. The Réunion rail, also endemic to Réunion Island, is known from subfossil remains discovered in 1996 and described in 1999. It was likely the largest member of its genus, closely related to the white-throated rails, and probably flightless due to its bone structure. Historical records from 1674 by Sieur Du Bois mention a wood rail, which is believed to refer to this species, distinct from the larger Réunion swamp hen. The Réunion rail likely became extinct in the late 17th century, with its disappearance tied to the island's ecological changes after human settlement. The Réunion pink pigeon, a rusty red subspecies closely related to the Mauritius pink pigeon, was once abundant on Réunion Island, as described by Du Bois in 1674. Its distinctive red bill base and fiery eye rings highlight its close affinity to its Mauritian relatives within the genus Nessoinas. While multiple columbid species once inhabited Réunion, the pink pigeon likely vanished due to introduced predators like rats and cats, along with overhunting. By the late 17th century, native pigeons had disappeared from the island, marking the loss of this unique lineage. The Réunion night heron was the largest of its genus in the Mascarene Islands, known for its strong wings and preference for fishing rather than terrestrial hunting. Initially described by Du Bois in 1674 and later confirmed by subfossil finds, it stood out from its relatives on Mauritius and Rodriguez. Despite limited records, it likely became extinct around 1674, with no clear cause linked to habitat loss, introduced predators, or hunting pressure. Its disappearance remains somewhat mysterious, as it may have survived longer than historical accounts suggest. The broad-billed parrot of Mauritius was a uniquely large parrot with a disproportionately big head and powerful jaws, marked by a distinct, fixed frontal crest. Sexual dimorphism was extreme, with males significantly larger than females, possibly influencing their behavior and ecological roles. Historical accounts and modern analyses suggest it had vibrant plumage, likely a striking combination of red body, blue head and red beak, and was capable of flight, though awkwardly. Its diet probably included hard palm seeds, similar to the hyacinth macaw, and it may have played a vital role in seed dispersal alongside other now extinct island fauna. Behaviorally, it was described as aggressive and unwilling to eat in captivity, traits that may have helped it resist predation longer than expected. The species likely became extinct by the late 17th century due to hunting, introduced predators like rats and macaques, and habitat changes linked to palm harvesting. Despite limited deforestation initially, Its poor flight and island tameness made it vulnerable, and unlike other parrots, it was never kept as a pet or transported off the island. The giant vampire bat Desmodus draculae was the largest vampire bat known to science, exceeding its modern relatives by 30% in size and possibly boasting a wingspan of 50 centimeters. Fossil and subfossil remains suggest it roamed widely across Central and South America, from Mexico to Argentina, with some evidence placing its survival as recently as the 17th century. Its skull structure hints at a long, narrow face with an upturned snout, adapted for blood feeding, and it may have targeted large prey such as megafauna, deer or camelids. Some researchers believe its extinction may be tied to the loss of megafaunal hosts during the Quaternary extinction event, leaving it unable to adapt to smaller prey. The bat's range during its existence likely spanned a warmer South America, possibly extending into regions like Ecuador and French Guiana. Though no longer seen today, the surprisingly fresh condition of some remains points to a relatively recent disappearance in geological terms. The dodo, perhaps the most iconic of all extinct island species, was a large flightless pigeon native to Mauritius, a remote volcanic island in the Indian Ocean. Standing about 1 meter tall, the dodo evolved from smaller, flying ancestors that likely arrived from Southeast Asia, adapting quickly in an environment free of terrestrial predators. Contrary to the familiar blue-gray depictions, its true coloration remains uncertain, though descriptions suggest an earthy brown plumage, cream wing feathers, yellow legs and a pale, featherless face. Often imagined as clumsy and unintelligent, the dodo was likely a swift and nimble bird, with leg-bone proportions indicating agility. Its brain size was on par with other pigeons, surprisingly bright birds, and it likely had a keen sense of smell. The dodo's appearance may also have changed with the seasons, becoming fattest in spring and molting at summer's end. Sadly, within just a century of its discovery in the late 1,500 years, the dodo vanished. Its trusting nature made it an easy target for sailors, while invasive mammals and rapid habitat destruction sealed its fate. Eggs were eaten, food supplies depleted, and the bird, unequipped to handle such pressures, dwindled to extinction. The most shocking part is that despite its recent extinction, very few remains of this bird still exist. In the 17th century, there was no awareness of species evolution, and people couldn't imagine that an animal could disappear forever. Once the dodos were gone, many at the time believed they would eventually reappear spontaneously. Though its loss went largely unnoticed at the time, the dodo has since become a powerful symbol of the fragility of island ecosystems, and a lasting emblem of human-driven extinction. The Mauritius sheldgoose was a small, tame and increasingly terrestrial bird that once lived in flocks on Mauritius. Closely related to the Egyptian goose, it adapted to island life with strong legs and a grazing lifestyle, avoiding water whenever possible. Though once abundant, it vanished rapidly in the late 17th century, likely due to overhunting and invasive predators. Like the dodo, it disappeared before its uniqueness could be fully understood or appreciated. The red rail was a flightless bird with reddish plumage and a long, curved beak, well adapted to foraging for invertebrates, snails, and possibly small reptiles in Mauritius's leaf-littered forests. Highly sensitive mechanoreceptors in its bill allowed it to detect buried prey, much like kiwis and ibises. Tragically, its lack of fear toward humans and its attraction to red objects made it easy to hunt. Flocks could be lured and captured with red cloths. Misidentified for years as the dodo, it filled the vacuum left by the dodo's extinction and likely bred more efficiently, but still succumbed to similar pressures. Predation by introduced species such as pigs, macaques and especially cats ultimately sealed its fate. By the late 1,600 years, it had vanished from historical records, a quiet end to a bird once common and now forever entangled with the dodo's legacy. The mascarene coot, a large, black waterbird with a white crest, resembled an oversized Eurasian coot and preferred diving to flying when threatened. Though capable of inter-island travel, it remained vulnerable due to its tameness and limited flight. Overhunting, combined with habitat destruction and the introduction of predators like cats, led to its rapid decline. By the late 1600 years, sightings had ceased, and this once common bird vanished quietly alongside many other lost species of the mascarenes. The Mauritius night heron is an extinct night heron species from Mauritius. It is only known by 7 subfossil bone remains found in Mare aux Sanjas. Only the coracoid and the tarsometatarsus are left today. It was scientificically described in 1893 by Edward Newton and Hans Gadow from the University of Cambridge. They measured the tarsometatarsus with 8 centimeters. It became presumably extinct shortly after it was first mentioned by François Leguat in 1693, who described them as a great flight of bitterns. The mascarene teal, closely related to Bernier's teal of Madagascar, was a small duck with stronger wings and a size between a sunda teal and a mallard. Once found in great numbers on both Mauritius and Réunion, it fell victim to intense overhunting by early settlers. By the 1690 years, reports described the bird as increasingly rare, with only second-hand mentions following shortly after. Habitat loss likely played a role, but human exploitation was the primary driver of its decline. Its quiet disappearance marked yet another loss in the rapid unraveling of the Mascarene Islands' unique birdlife.